All right, the time has come and we're ready to start building the iMusic project. The iMusic project will allow us to manage a wish list of albums. We'll be able to search for artists, browse through their albums, and then add them to our wish list. So let's begin by opening up Xcode, and we'll create a new project. Although we could use one of the templates like the master detail or possibly single view application, I want to make sure you have a good understanding of how all of these pieces fit together. So we're going to actually build our application based on this empty application template. So I'll highlight empty application and click next. And we'll give this project the name iMusic. Give it an appropriate company identifier. So this is usually just reverse domain name notation. For the device family, we'll select iPhone. And let's make sure use core data is unchecked. We will definitely use automatic reference counting, so make sure that's checked, and we will make sure that include unit test is checked. I'll click next. For source control, you can leave that unchecked, and then select the location where you want to save this. I'll just save mine to the desktop. Click create. So now we have a very bare bones application. We have a single class file called app.delegate created, and I'll go look at the implementation for this class. And let me actually delete these methods down here at the bottom. These aren't relevant to our discussion. So we can focus our attention just on this application did finish launching with options method. So this currently is creating a UI window, and it's just setting it to the full screen. So a UI window is just a component on which we build our user interface. Setting its background color to white, then making it the key window. So it just means this is the window that's responding to user input. So at this point, I can actually run the application. Let me select iPhone Simulator and click Run. So there we go. Not a very interesting application at this point in time, but we do at least have a running iPhone application. So let's stop this. I'll highlight the iMusic group, and let's create a view controller for this project. So I'll go up to the File menu and select New, File. And under our custom templates, I'm going to select the Objective-C class and click Next. And I'm going to call this Main View Controller. I want to make sure this is a subclass of UI View Controller. And let's make sure that Targeted for iPad and with XIB for User Interface, that both of these are unchecked. And I'll click Next. I'll save it to my iMusic group. And under targets, let's make sure that both iMusic and iMusic tests are both selected. In an upcoming discussion on unit testing, we'll see why we want to have that checked. And I'll click Create. So this created a very bare bones view controller for us. Now we'd like to define the view controller's user interface through Interface Builder. So let's go create an Interface Builder file called a nib so that we can define that user interface graphically. So I'll go up to the File menu, select New, File. So instead of creating a source code file, I'll go to the User Interface section and select View, click Next, and our device family will be iPhone, and click Next. And we'll give this a name matching our view controller. So we'll call this Main View and exclude the word controller from the end. And both of the targets can be selected, that's fine. And I'll click Create. All right, so this creates an empty Interface Builder file for us. In order for our view controller to get created when the application starts up, we need to do a little additional work in the app delegate. So let me switch back over to appdelegate.m. And I'm going to import the main view controller. Create an instance of this. So down here, I will create an instance of the main view controller. Actually, I don't even need to strongly type this because I'm not that concerned about the type in this case. I'll just define this as an ID type, so just a generic Objective-C object type. But I'll create an instance of this class. And we'll call init with nib name. So this is the initializer we'll use when creating a view controller. And I'm going to pass in the string main view. So this is the name of our nib file minus the .xib extension. And for the bundle argument, I will just pass nil for now. We'll talk about bundles in a future chapter, but for now, we'll just set it to nil. Now we need to make the main view controller what's considered the root view controller of our window. So this is what will take over the full screen and essentially provide the launching point for future interaction with the app. So I'll say self.window root view controller is equal to controller. Compile that with Command B. Build succeeded. So let's go ahead and run the application. Well, that doesn't look so good. Got this very ominous looking warning showing up in our console. It says terminating the app due to uncaught exception. And the specific message it's giving me is that it loaded the main view nib, but the view outlet was not set. Well, let's try to resolve this issue. Let me stop the application. I will switch back to the main view. Let me close the console area. If you'll remember from our discussion about nib files, we have these two placeholder objects at the top of this file. The key one that we need to concern ourselves with is this thing called the file's owner. Since we manually created this nib file, no association between this nib and the view controller has been made. So we need to do that here. So if I select file's owner, and then over on the right of the screen, I will select the identity inspector, and this allows us to set a custom class. So the custom class we want to specify is main view controller. So this is making the main view controller the owner. So the object that owns this nib file and is responsible for loading it at runtime. So the nib now knows about the view controller, but we also need to make the view controller know about this view. And the way we can do that is by setting its view property. So if you highlight file's owner, hold down the control key, and then click and drag to the view object, a little pop-up will show up, and just click the word view. So that will make that association. So now the nib knows about the view controller, and the view controller knows about the nib. So let's go run the application again. Well, that appears to be better. Resize that. We don't seem to have the error in our console anymore, but it doesn't really look any different than it did initially. Well, just to make sure everything's hooked up, let's go make a couple of quick changes. So I'm going to highlight the main view, and I will switch over to the attributes inspector. And this will allow us to set some attributes on this view. I think for the time being, really the only one we'll want to set is just the background color. By default, it's set to white. So let's select that, and we'll click Other. And we can select any color we want. I'll select kind of a cream color. Now, Interface Builder doesn't seem to redraw sometimes unless you click on the interface file. Seems to be a bug in the current version. But you can see the view is now kind of this yellowish color. So let me save that. And if all went well, we've made all of our connections correctly, when the application launches, we should now see a yellow window. So let's run the application, cross our fingers. And yes, victory is ours. We win. So that looks great. Well, maybe not great, but we're at least headed in the right direction. So we've covered quite a few things in this chapter. We've created a brand new project. We've created a view controller, created a nib, made the connection between that view controller and the nib, and then finally created an instance of this and set it as the root view controller for our application. So a lot of ground was covered, so congratulate yourself if you've made it all the way through the lesson. But this will provide us a good foundation for building our iMusic application. So I'll see you in the next lesson.